There's some breaking news coming out of the Senate where Chuck Schumer may have figured out a way to deal with the immunity decision the Supreme Court came out with a couple of weeks ago. So I'll get to that in a second, but some background. You might not remember this because the media has been totally focused on Joe Biden's age and his one bad debate night instead of the many terrible decisions coming to the Supreme Court. Prior to last week, everyone knew that in America, one of the beautiful things about our country is that no one is above the law, that no one is above the law. Not one man, not one woman, no one. Last week, the Supreme Court changed that, and they made it so that the President of the United States, when acting in their, quote, official capacity, is immune from criminal prosecution. Here's one of the prosecutors from Watergate talking about why this is such a terrifying decision.
Justice Roberts tries to pawn it off as some kind of fantastic idea that Justice Sotomayor is coming up with, talking about a Navy SEAL 6 going out and attacking and assassinating political rivals at the direction of the president. This is not so fantastic, and it's not so unusual. This is exactly what Richard Nixon did. Justices totally ignored this entire history of Watergate in coming up with this crazy opinion that permits somebody like Donald Trump, who has already come up with a plan where he says he's going to be dictator from day one, and he's going to suspend the Constitution, and has already violated a number of federal criminal laws.
I mean, this is such a great point because of all the people who should be given this type of flexibility and immunity, we do not want to be giving it to someone who has proven that they will do and say anything to stay in power. And what that looked like last time was, of course, January 6th. But this next time, now knowing if he were to get elected, he would now know that under the law, as it is understood by the Supreme Court, I think wrongly, he would be able to do literally anything, as long as he called it a, quote, official act. And like this man just said, he would be able to take out hits on his political opponents, and it would be extremely hard for anyone to prosecute him for it. So we are really staring down the barrel of dictatorship. It might be scary, but that's true. Let's hear more of what he's got to say.
So this is basically opening up the floodgates to Donald Trump to do whatever he wants. And full steam ahead, which is really frightening.
Nick, something else that you wrote that really struck me as well was this idea that if a president like Trump gets absolute criminal immunity for his official acts, then by extension, it would make sense that subordinates that are following orders from Donald Trump, for example, to do criminal acts would also not be prosecuted because they're just, quote, following directions, instructions, or orders. Nick, we saw that happen with Hitler. We saw that happen in Germany. So
that's right.
What is this theory, I guess, by extension, that subordinates of a president like Donald Trump following his orders, acting criminally, they could not be prosecuted as well?
Well, the rationale throughout this opinion is that you can't really get behind the president's motive and what he's doing. And if he's got people, the executive branch, it's the executive branch, the president, that the Supreme Court is focused on. And if, in fact, it's the executive branch and Trump is ordering one of his subordinates to obstruct justice or to carry out a hit or to do whatever might be illegal, and if the president is ordering it and that's an official act and that can't be illegal, then how can you really prosecute somebody who is an arm of the executive branch who's carrying out that order? I mean, it really doesn't make any sense. Where does it stop?
Where does it stop? I mean, I don't think it stops anywhere great. It might stop with the end of our democracy. I think that's where it stops.
What I read from this, not as a technical person, as a lawyer or anything, I read that now the imperial presidency is now made concrete. It's not about who's in office. It's not about their temperament. It's not about their disposition. The imperial presidency is now concretely here. And so just for me, just as historically, Katie, what would it mean now? What would it mean for Nixon to have lived under this ruling? Would we have even had Watergate is a question. And it's from there. Donald Trump has always had around him those who were supportive of him and those who were supportive of the imperial presidency. And that line blurred over and over again. You saw it clearly with Bill Barr. Now the imperial presidency is instantiated along with an imperial court given Chevron decision. Here we are. Fundamentally
it does
worried
put
about
a lot of.
So these are some very smart lawyers, some who worked at Watergate, some who've done, they've spoken in front of the Supreme Court, they've argued in front of the Supreme Court, who are warning us, I don't know how they could be any louder about it, that this is going to be the end of democracy as we know it. And in a way, this decision has already made a before and after in America. Before, it was assumed that no person was above the law, and now we know that the president is above the law. And someone like Trump, as discussed with his minions, will be able to reshape the country in a vastly different way than we had ever known it before, with this full support of the Supreme Court. It is absolutely terrifying. And if you're not being terrified from this, then you're not paying attention. I'm glad you're listening, but we need a lot more people to pay attention. And we frankly need the media to stop focusing on Joe Biden's age. Joe Biden's age is something that we all knew about 4 years ago. We have all known about for 4 years now. And yes, Joe Biden slowed down. He doesn't walk as quickly. He doesn't speak as quickly. He speaks a little bit quieter. But every single person who has worked with him or worked around him says that he is sharp. He gives probing questions. And frankly, if you look at the last 4 years and how we got out of COVID, we got shots in every single arm for anyone who wanted them. We beat inflation better than any major economy in the world. And so to me, I'm not really that worried about the guy who doesn't talk that slow or doesn't talk that fast. Doesn't bother me. So to the breaking news. When it comes to Trump's immunity problem, and it is a problem, Chuck Schumer is getting a little creative. Here's our breaking news. Chuck Schumer is pushing a bill that would strip Trump of the court-granted immunity. I think this is so smart. Now, I'm not sure if this is going to pass, but it's so smart to be thinking this way. We are a system of checks and balances. And it is great that the legislative branch is finally starting to grow some balls, frankly, and able to start checking the executive branch and checking this out-of-control Supreme Court. Quote, they incorrectly declared that former President Trump enjoys broad immunity from criminal prosecution for actions he took while in office. They incorrectly declared that all future presidents are entitled to breathtaking level of immunity, so long as their conduct is ostensibly carried out in their official capacity as president. Quote, that has, in many ways, made him untouchable. Quote, I will work with my colleagues on legislation classifying Trump's election subversion acts as unofficial acts not to subject immunity. Quote, we're doing this because we believe that in America, no president should be free to overturn an election against the will of the people. What an idea, no matter what the conservative justices may believe. Now, this is awesome, and he says here it's to rein in the abuse of the federal judiciary. And this is the type of thinking we need coming out of the Senate more and more, coming out of the House, coming out of Congress. We need people to start being proactive. We need to go on a fence. And I like this for that reason. I have no idea if this is going to pass muster, if this is the way that we can go about kind of reining in the judiciary, trying to check the executive branch. But we've got, you know what? Doing something is better than doing what we've been doing, which is nothing. So we've got to do something. I personally believe the way that we could really lock this in is through a constitutional amendment that says that the President of the United States serves at the will of the people and has the same criminal liability as any other person in America. It sucks it's going to take to that, but I do think that we're going to need to get to that point. Not sure how we're going to get there. It might actually take a president taking power and abusing it in such a way that we have to do something, and both sides agree that we cannot continue with this vague understanding of what immunity is for a president. So I like this. I'm hoping we see more of this coming out of the House and the Senate, because we have to be on the offense. We cannot rest anymore. We've got to keep fighting. And the way that you're going to be able to fight is by voting in November. This is truly the most important election in our lifetime. I know we say it a lot. I know it's hyperbole. It can be hyperbolic. But this is truly the most important election in our lifetime because of decisions like this coming out of the Supreme Court. We need a president in there who is going to defend the rule of law, not attack it. Thank you so much for watching the Occupy Democrats channel. If you'd like to see more of this, hit like and subscribe. If you'd like to see more of me, there's a link to my channel in the description. Thank you so much.